he was the founder and CEO of Refine Labs, a B2B demand gen agency that he started in 2019 from his living room with one $100 an hour client contract. And then in less than 3 years, he grew it to an 8-figure revenue business with over 200 B2B companies that he's consulted for. He then started the Revenue Vitals podcast, which is one of the premier podcasts for revenue leaders out there, oftentimes challenging the status quo of B2B go-to-market strategies. And what he's working on right now, he's the CEO of Paceto, which is a tech-enabled go-to-market strategy consultancy where they use proprietary data models to help B2B executives identify and execute against their highest priority growth levers. Today, we're going to be talking about signal-based sales. What is it, why we do it, and how to set it up. Chris, pleasure to have you on again today.
Let's do it, Alan. Happy to be back. What's up, everyone? I can't see people in the crowd, but great to be here. Looking forward to diving in and hope it's super valuable for everyone.
Amazing. And folks, please do leave questions. We'll be going over that after each we split up into 4 segments, and in each segment, it's going to be 10 minutes and then 5 minutes of Q&A. So please drop your questions in the chat. Thank you. So let's start off. What is signal-based sales, and why should we care about this topic?
So signal-based selling or signal-based go-to-market is effectively an evolution of how go-to-market teams are actually like sales development. Sales teams will follow up and have reasons to reach out for people. So historically, it was all based on either MQLs, first-party signals, and or just random cold lists. Let's find this account and call someone. Now, with the introduction of all this new data like website de-anonymization, so you can understand the accounts or even the people inside of the accounts, there are signals around job changes. So now there's a new CMO, which might be a good signal for you to reach out and activate sales. People have been on some third-party website reading about your category of product. There are a lot now of second and third-party signals and the evolution of first-party signals where sales development, sales teams now have a ton of different reasons of how to reach out. All this data can be super powerful and super useful. But when we have all these signals, we also need a method to understand what are the signals that actually matter. How do we separate the signal from the noise? Because still today, a sales development rep or a sales rep will reach out to a prospect, and more than 99 times out of 100, they're going to lose that opportunity or not even get an opportunity. And so we need to be able to use data to be able to figure out what are the signals that actually matter, and then how does this create an advantage inside of our go-to-market so that we're able to reach out to the right accounts at the right time.
And why is signal-based selling, why is it coming to the forefront recently? I think, the terms have thrown around a lot in the past, maybe with account-based marketing or high-intent leads, but today it's getting a little bit hotter. So what's the reason behind that?
Because I think historically, if you think about, and I don't really look at it this way, but a lot of people do, so let's just use it for the sake of conversation. You kind of had like this inbound motion where marketing's providing MQLs, and you have this outbound motion where sales is basically doing their own independent prospecting. And specifically on the outbound side, sales has been using signals for a while, but generally it's like, get this person from Zoom Info, let's look at our cold or our closed lost list or things like that. And what signal-based selling does is it gives an avenue to optimize your outbound motion at a much higher level to reach out to the right accounts at the right time. And then furthermore, I don't look at these as distinct like inbound and outbound. I think looking at it in first party and third party is a much better way to look at it. And then inside of the go-to-market, when you look at it that way, you look at it holistically, not marketing versus sales, but all these signals together. We need a way to be able to combine and look at all first, second, and third-party signals together to understand what are the things that actually matter to our go-to-market.
One of the things I've noticed is that, and I haven't been in sales for very long, but in the past, maybe there was just a couple automated sequences that came out at me. And then these days, I'm basically inundated in a carpet bomb. My inbox is filled to the brim with people trying to sell me stuff. And most of which is 80%, 90% is probably automated. And so when you have that much automation going through, I almost never respond to any of the ones that I see as sequences. I always respond to the ones that I feel like are personalized. So I feel like signals tell you which ones to prioritize, which one to focus on, and then you have a higher chance of converting that prospect, especially if they're a best fit one. But curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I like to separate these two ideas between reaching out to the right person or the right account, the right fit, and then reaching out at the right time, and then delivering the right message through the right medium. I think these are 3 different independent things. a lot of companies have figured out who the right fits are. There's enough firmographic data around companies, and companies think about with account-based strategies around their ICP, and they know what types of people they want to reach out. So a lot of companies have figured out what are the right fit. I think the next evolution is really around what is the right time to reach out, which I think Signals provides the fastest avenue today to be able to do that. And then following on to that, we're going to have right message, right medium, where some of that might be automated through AI and other ones are going to be human personalized outreach. And all three of those require their own sort of optimization steps.
I totally agree about the right timing. Someone once told me this, which is like, yeah, who do you, classic go-to-market problem is who do you target, what do you say, and then when do you say it, and the when being the most important, but the unsolved one. But if you have the when and the who, then the what you say matters a little bit less, kind of like what you're saying. And
Totally.
just curious from your point of view, what's the state that we're in today? I think maybe we have the who, like you said, we can filter down, we can target the right ICP. The what, still working on that with the SDR team, and then the when. So where are we in the state of the when? How are people figuring out this when question?
I would say that we're in a state of chaos. I would say that there are tons of tools popping up that sell some level of data that is a signal that sales could use. There is not a lot of measurement, or especially at scale, consistent measurement around the effectiveness of these signals. So we have tons of different people across our go-to-market operating on different signals with no real tracking around it. So all we have is the anecdotes of what people say. Yeah, I reached out during this time and I because it was a job change, the job change signal is working for me. But we can't go back as a go-to-market strategy leader or a RevOps person or a chief revenue officer and look at the data and say, at scale, this is working. And so I think that we're still in a little bit of state of, it's exciting. There's a lot of progress being made. There's a lot of opportunity happening. But I think that it's going to take a lot of time to create the infrastructure and the data around how we continuously use this. So yes, companies are using it, but then over time, if you just look at this and you don't have it, then all of a sudden companies are going to have 10, 15, 20 different tools that are providing different data sources and not be really clear on which ones are working. And we're going to get back to the same problem we had with MQLs, which is that 99.9% of MQLs don't become a customer. And so the same exact phenomena will happen in signals without a data layer to understand which ones work and which ones don't.
Love it. So let's go back to the pieces of the signal-based platform. The analytics piece is something you just mentioned just now. You also mentioned there's signal orchestrators, providers, aggregators. Can we talk a little bit about that? And then we can dive into the types of tools that roll up in each.
Yeah, signal providers have been around for a while. Think Bambora, TrustRadius, G2. It's a third-party platform typically that is able to de-anonymize at the account or person level and then provide you with that signal from their third-party property into your data layer. So those have been around for a while. Then you look at the next level up, which would be a signal aggregator, which is taking a variety of different signals, bringing them together, and then giving you a pool of signals. So Sixth Sense is an example many people know. They ingest Bambora, they ingest G2, they have their own first-party account-level website de-anonymization, and they feed you all of these signals, whether it's in a black box or discrete signals. Sixth Sense specifically is a black box still today, to my knowledge. And then there are upstarts popping up that have generated a lot more transparency around the signals and the data. So they'll aggregate the signals, but then give you exact signals to work off of. And then there's been an interesting, whether it's a blend or two separate platforms of the orchestrators that then take action against the signals. So in the historical thing, that was like a sales loft or an outreach. You push the signal into that, and then you have a sequence. But now these platforms are starting to come together where the signal aggregators will also have some AI or outreach or sales engagement layer where sales will take action within the same platform of the signals. And then lastly, downstream, from my perspective, inside of the CRM, you will have the measurement of the effectiveness of the signals inside of the CRM that's taking the signals, comparing it to opportunity data and things like that, and giving you the analytics around how to continuously optimize.
And for each of these stages, can you implement these stages at any size of company, or do you need to be a certain size? Because what I've always seen is for larger enterprises, they'll adopt the Sixth Sense, which is like the full package, end-to-end sales automation, sales orchestration, marketing automation, marketing orchestration, but the price tag is pretty large. And so curious from, talking to 200 B2B companies, if you've seen only one stage exist at certain sizes, two stages, three stages, and how would they set that up?
I mean, first off, when you're at a large enterprise or a mid-market company, the cost of the software is marginal compared to the cost of change and the cost of actually transforming the organization inside of the company. So, like, sure, you might pay $200,000 for that technology, but then you're going to spend millions of dollars trying to get everyone to actually like use and change around the technology. So I just wanted to call that out there. I think the likelihood of success in large orgs and what I've seen so far in implementing things like that is very low. You actually don't get widespread adoption on these tools very often, and the cost of change becomes very high. And so I think that that creates an advantage for earlier stage companies or nimble growth stage companies that are able to make major adjustments inside of how they run their go to market, that are able to manage the people changes and the processes and the data. I think gives us an advantage when we compete against maybe a big, large competitor that runs the category. So I see widespread adoption of these things much more quickly in early stage companies. I think just given that the barrier of organizational change is much lower.
Yep. One of the issues with smaller companies that I've seen is that they don't have the manpower and the resources, similar to how larger companies have all these people that they can orchestrate. Smaller companies don't have the person to man the chatbot, or man, like if there's a signal that hits, to automatically or to leverage that signal and then reach out. They don't have the time because they're taking calls, and they're feeding off inbound or they're doing their own prospecting. There's not as much processes. So it's definitely a double-edged sword, and at least for Warmly, we're trying to figure this out as well, because larger companies, they have the budget, they have the people, and then they have all this orchestration they need to put in place. Smaller companies, they don't have the people. They're willing to try for automation, but you still need it's hard to connect the two.
There's a big misunderstanding that more money makes you go faster and more people make you go faster. It's oftentimes the reverse, that you move faster with less people and more nimble teams, and you make more of the right decisions when you have less money. And so that's just something I like to put out there, because a lot of people think in order to grow faster or be more, we need to spend more. And in my experience, especially with larger companies, it's actually the reverse. That more money and more people create more processes. It creates more bloat. It creates more reporting layers. It creates more politics. It creates more meetings. It creates less scrutiny around, do we actually need to spend this $300,000 here? And when you have a $20 million budget and $300,000 is 15 or 1.5%, it becomes you don't scrutinize the investments in the same way when you have less money and less people. So I like to change that paradigm, because I think that it's empowering for earlier stage or smaller orgs that are competing against big companies to think that way.
That's really, yeah, it's very powerful. It reminds me of this book that I think a lot of people are adopting now, which is 10x is easier than 2x. And this idea that if you just go 2x, you just work twice as hard, you'll get 2x results. But if you're trying to achieve the 10x outcome, then you have to fundamentally shift the way you think about things. And so to your point, in the past that you've talked about this, is like we might be spending the 10x budget on the thing that only gives us the 2x result. And we're not even looking at the 2x thing that we're spending 2x on, that's supposedly giving us the 10x result that we could double down on. So it's a great segue into let's talk more about signal-based analytics, if you don't mind, and what that's all about.
Yeah, signal-based analytics is the process of isolating the signal that triggered sales to reach out. And when you do that in a large, mature go-to-market, you're going to collect millions of data points, and those millions of data points provide very clear trends on what are the signals that drive high sales productivity and high sales velocity. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, Chris, what matters is the 19 other signals that happened before that. And in our experience, maybe those things do matter, but the primary signal that happens that triggers sales to reach out has a massive determinant and create very easy, clear ways to optimize your go-to-market, your sales development resources, your marketing investments, and your sales resources just against that one data point. And so I think there's further exploration and further work to do, but as a step one, I think just tracking the signals and using that data to then optimize how you spend marketing dollars when sales development reaches out, how many sales development resources you actually need, all the way downstream, I think provides a great data layer to optimize the go-to-market around efficiency and return on investment, which is something that hasn't been part of the conversation in B2B tech historically, and now it is.
Is there like a scrappy way for companies to get started on doing this? Do you track it all in the CRM? Do you make fields for this? Do you have like self attribution on the forms when they fill out their inbound lead form? What are some of like the lower hanging fruits that people can do?
The scrappiest way to do this would be to use like a responded campaign member against all signals, and then track those outcomes. So a lot of marketing teams will use campaigns, but then when you think about why sales is reaching out with their own independent prospecting, it's largely untracked, what I'll call a black hole. And so being able to integrate both of those things together, the campaign object is not ideal for this, but it is a scrappy way to be able to get a lot of it done and get those insights. You could also think about, like in this way, just having one primary thing where all of sales activity is generated and triggered through the responded campaign member object.
Got it. And how about for larger companies? Have you seen it implemented at the larger scale? What's the thing that they're able to accomplish that smaller companies can't as far as analytics goes? Is it because
It's
they have a bit?
actually it's actually a lot easier to implement at a smaller company because you have way less tech debt, way less processes, way less politics, and other things like that. And so I don't think this is a big versus large conversation. And because big companies have more resources, they're able to do this more effectively. I actually see it as the reverse. And so the ideal way to do it is to use a custom object that unifies all the different objects inside of the CRM for data analytics and reporting. And so that object would now be a standard signal object that then takes data off of the contact, off of the lead, off of the opportunities, off of the campaign members, stamps its own data, and then is able to track this full view between the actual signal that happens all the way to close one revenue in a very comprehensive and complete way. And so I believe that unified pipeline architecture, I'm very surprised Salesforce has not made anything like this standard already, because it's a huge problem in companies. People have built managed packages and Salesforce apps and custom builds in order to get there, but there's no real support from Salesforce to do that. And then inside of HubSpot, HubSpot has created a lead object that operates very differently than how the Salesforce lead object works. And I think that HubSpot object with some customization could be able to unify all the data and collect that properly as well.
What is the thing that you're collecting specifically for the custom object? Is it the how this person got in, the first touch attribute, first touch lead source? What's the thing that is being tracked all the way through that you're mentioning?
It collects everything. It collects and calculates everything related to that signal all the way through the opportunity. So you're at the highest level, you have ARR, you might have account segment, you have account tier, you have the rep that's working it, you have the SDR that's working it, you have when you booked a meeting, whether the meeting was held, how many days between a meeting to the meeting held, did it become qualified pipeline, what stage is it in, what was the time between stages, what was the primary signal of why sales reached out, if that was a signal, if it was related to marketing, what are the UTMs related to that? I just rattled off some of the things, but the purpose is to, right now in a B2B company, all that data is spread out between 6 different objects inside of the CRM, and then some other random shit in different tools like marketing attribution and marketing mix modeling and things like that. And you can't package it all together to be able to analyze it and make decisions. And so the object basically unifies the go-to-market together instead of using these discrete objects that track part of the process.
I love it. Okay. And so a workflow might be there was someone who visited the site or there's a third-party intent signal, and then your SDR goes and reaches out. They become an opportunity. All this stuff is being tracked. Why did we decide to reach out? Well, this this SDR reached out because they saw this signal, and that's a line item. That's like a custom object field. So Sally reached out. This was a signal she reached out on. This is the AR size of the deal, and this is associated with every single record. Lead record, account record, opportunity record. HubSpot is different company deal. This is what you mean.
Yeah, there's effectively two different ways that you could do it. Most companies will do it this way first, and I'll just cover the other one. So most companies will do it this way, where a sales rep will reach out. Okay, so you have a sales rep that reached out, and then in your data, you're going to look back and see what happened with that contact or account within a look back window. You're going to be able to identify what was the primary signal, and then through that, you're going to create the record. And then you're going to be able to track that record all the way through. If that person is recycled, disqualified, closed, lost, that record gets closed. If that thing happens again, then a new record would be created. And so that's using sales reaches out. Let's look back and see what happened. Alternatively, you could say this thing happened. Now sales go reach out. And so you can change it from a looking back, like a reactive sales reached out, let's go look, to this happened, sales go do something. And so those are the two different ways that you can do it. In either way, the record will be created in the same way. It's just whether or not you're looking back or using the data to drive the action.
Yeah, maybe I'm not understanding this part, but when there's a signal and the salesperson reaches out, does that create a record in the CRM? The fact that there was a signal, or is this a separate system that does this? Because we're trying to track, I think, the times that you reach out and the signals you reach out for, and then the records that create in the CRM. Like these might be two different things, but curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So most companies will operate this way, like I mentioned. So sales is going to reach out with a sales engagement platform, or hopefully their activities and outreach are being tracked. So that happens. We know who it's to and what account it's to. And then we're going to look back in the data that we have of that person and try and identify what the signal was. So, and then based when the salesperson reaches out, the record gets created. Oftentimes, a record will be created and it'll say there will be no signal because the companies don't track it or there was no available data. In the future, when we think about how AI could automate a lot of outbound and how we're going to be able to use data to continuously optimize, that I believe in the future, basically almost all, if not all, of sales outreach and sales development outreach should be happen based on data. And so instead of the sales rep just doing random stuff and then us looking for the data to connect it together, it's here's the data, sales go do stuff now. And so I think the long-term view will be, okay, we have this signal based on the historical data. We know this signal is high quality and we know this account or person is the right fit. Sales go do something with it, and all that happens and architected automatically through revenue operations.
Got it. Yeah, that is very interesting. Thinking about it this way, which is when there's a signal, um, sales does an action, or any sales, marketing, whoever, they do an action, and that action is associated with the signal. Like we're not really set up that way. Marketing will put out campaigns, they'll have a campaign ID. Sales will reach out because they, through intuition or through their timing or for whatever reason, but we never in the CRM track that information. So how do we track that? Like when an SDR goes and reaches out to someone on LinkedIn, they don't necessarily input, here's the reason I did that. So how do we start to track this?
I would never recommend relying on having a sales rep or a human resource put in manual data around why they reached out. So that's something that people think would be a hack, like, oh, let's just have our SDR put in every time they reach out why they did something. But it's going to lead to low quality data, inconsistencies in the data, and most people aren't going to do it. And then we're wasting 5 minutes per reach out per time to have the SDR think about and enter data, which is a total waste of time. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. But given all of the tracking and data we have around our target accounts and all of our customers and how most of that is logged inside of a CRM or an ancillary tool, that when our sales rep reaches out, we know that they reached out and we know who they reached out to, and therefore we have that contact record. We can go back and look at what happened with that contact record and try and make at least an estimate or an educated guess around the signal. Is it perfect? No, but it does provide the quickest way to get there for companies today. We use that in a lot of our historical analysis, that process more or less. Most companies have somewhere between 25 and 40% signal coverage against revenue, and most of those things are first-party marketing signals. And the third-party data that sales is using for independent prospecting is not tracked at all. So while people are pumped to have 6sense and Common Room and Warmly and Regi AI and all these other tools that are in user gems and all these things going wild, that they don't have any idea whether the things are working or not outside of the anecdotal opinion of the people that use them. And so I think that will create issues downstream that haven't been realized yet. It'll take some time for that stuff to weed out. But I mean, I think a lot of us believe that a lot of the signals that come from a lot of the platforms are total garbage. I think a lot of people think that. And so if we think that, tracking the data to confirm, validate, or refute those assumptions, I think would be the next best move.
I love it. I think you're absolutely right. When I talk to a lot of the people who are maybe using the incumbent software, one of the biggest gripes was, I'm not sure if this works. It sounds like it should work. I should be reaching out because it's high intent prospects that are doing XYZ things, but I'm not sure if it actually works. And they have to look at the overall pipeline increase or decrease. And oftentimes it's kind of the same. Or it's the CMO who set it up or decided to buy this piece of software is no longer there because of the short tenures of CMOs. And then the people that are operating it have left, SDRs are gone, and the orchestration just falls apart. Coming back to this other point, though, you said that you find the lead, and you get this information, who reached out. How do you back into what signal it came from? Is there like a common flow that you found? like a common flow of lead gets created and then be back into the signal because it was likely this reason?
Yeah, I mean, we built custom software to be able to sift through specifically visible full circle campaign members, whatever the standard way that companies will track that inside of their CRM. So, I mean, you could have your RevOps team try to write really complicated SQL queries and things like that, but I think that software will ultimately be the solution here. And then there's just comprehensive logic around what object are we looking for, what are we looking for within what time period. And so that's generally like in terms of looking back historical, that's the only way to get it done because you can't go back and fill in data that you didn't collect in the first place. So looking back for whatever you have is the only way to get it done initially. And then I think moving forward, companies should be looking at it more as a proactive, this happened, sales do something, rather than sales did something, let's look back and see what happened.
Got it. Is there
Yeah.
one example of a looking backwards, like what's the SQL query in theory that you would run for a lead that came into the system and then you back into the signal that brought them there?
Sales reached out. We go back and look at the data. They use Visible, so we have all these different touch points of what things happened within a certain time period. We see that 3 days ago they attended our webinar. And that was the most recent thing. We say, okay, this is attached. Even though we didn't MQL this webinar attendee, we're able to go back and say they were at this webinar 3 days ago and then make an assumption about that was the reason why sales reached out. And so without doing the processing and looking back, you would not attribute that to a webinar. And this is just to be clear, I used the wrong word there. I don't view this as an attribution solution at all. It's really about trying to collect the data and think about your go-to-market as specifically once sales starts to take action all the way to closed won. It's just a big machine, especially when you operate at scale. You have hundreds of people operating in a machine. You ideally want to have consistent processes, consistent demos, consistent talk tracks, consistent proposals, consistent SLAs, follow-up times. You want to have as much consistency in your manufacturing facility as you can. And so it's just thinking about it in that way, and then looking at data to find ways to optimize.
Got it. So it seems like step one, you need to track everything. You got to track when these people come in, where they came in from, the webinars, all these touch points that happen. They need to be tracked because if you don't track it, then there's no way to even back into the data. I was curious if there was like other things. So you're basically aggregating as much information as possible, whether it's first party, whether it's the ones that you track yourself, or it's even third party signals. And then you say, like for instance, maybe 6sense had a big signal that said this company is in market. The SDR reached out for that reason, and then therefore you guys have a book meeting or an opportunity.
Yeah, but with 6sense, all you'd be able to say is 6sense MQ8 it. You wouldn't be able to say why they MQ8 it, which is one of what I consider a real flaw in their product right now.
Is there a way to get the why they MQ8 it? This is basically what you were saying.
Use a different vendor.
Okay. Are there any other vendors, and this could be your tool, that people are using to get that information about why some of these black box companies, just get more granularity into this?
Or maybe I mean, to my knowledge, 6sense is the only one that does this. So you could have demand-based common room, Warmly, Reggie, Zoom Info. Like, I think pretty much every other tool on the market does not hide the reason why. I'm not 100% educated on this, but that's my understanding right now.
Got it. And this role of, if the company were to do this, they would need to implement it with a person, and it has to be a role. So whose job is it to do this? Look back and
for I don't know, since 2020, 2021, I have been communicating my perspective that I think that RevOps should be the driver of outbound. That every single outbound action should be based on data. It should be tracked. RevOps should be doing this. What are they doing instead? They're too busy building ad hoc reports, and building compensation plans and random shit like that. I think it's a huge opportunity for RevOps to programmatically design our outbound our sales development prospecting machine. And so I think that's, when it comes down to it, I think that's who should be doing it. At least building the nuts and bolts. Maybe you have a different architect that's actually designing the what medium we're reaching out to, what are we saying, that is, a little bit more focused on customers and spent more time with customers than a RevOps team or person would. But I think when it comes to the plumbing, like operations is going to build the plumbing. And the question is who's architecting the building. And I don't have a clear. I think there's a lot of people with a lot of skills that could be able to do that, but I think you have to be very data driven. I think you have to understand customers well. I think that you ideally have done sales prospecting, marketing, many of those things before. Um, I don't. Yeah, those are some of the things, but I think this role is not very well defined.
If RevOps were to implement something pretty easily, what would be like maybe some low hanging fruits that they could just start out with? Because as I understand it, and you already alluded to, RevOps may not necessarily today be the most strategic function. They don't necessarily talk to customers on a daily basis. They don't sell on a daily basis. They don't market on a daily basis. So they're not really fully plugged in. But if there was like, you guys should probably do this. What would it be? Would it be to bring in a tool that tracks analytic software, or to make certain custom fields, make sure everything flows smoothly, like ARRs attached to the contact, attached to the leads, attached to the account? Are there any low hanging fruits that they can implement?
To get rid of the MQL.
Yeah, to set up the system that we're talking about right now, this
That's
signal based analytics system. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. The number one thing they could do is get rid of the
Oh,
MQL, replace it with something that's aligned against the whole revenue organization. That's not a marketing qualified lead. Maybe it's just a qualified lead, and then you have first party qualified leads, you have second and third party qualified leads, and everything is moving through one process instead of this disparate. Here are all the MQLs, and then here's all this third party outbound prospecting that we're not tracking, and just bringing it all together. That would be the hacky way in a similar fashion to how the companies would track an MQL, but tracking all of it together.
would you say this is, let's get rid of the MQL, let's just call it the SQL, and then everything falls under the same categorization to fit this
I would
this
just
lead
get rid
type?
of the M.
Oh, so qualified lead, just unify everything.
Yeah, or you could call it. You could have some other people have scoring around the fit and the signal. You could call it a qualified signal. I haven't really thought about the terminology, and frankly, I don't really care that much. But yeah, like the key point is getting rid of the M. That it's not a marketing qualified lead. It needs to be a qualified prospect or a qualified lead or a qualified signal, whatever you want to call it, for our go-to-market team. And I think this like MQL really creates the separation between marketing and the rest of the go-to-market team, and I don't think that it's productive.
So I like how you called it qualified lead or signal. Like signal and qualified lead are almost synonymous. So if you fulfill, are you basically saying that if it fulfills like the signal score, then it's a qualified lead? However, it does that. Maybe it's some sort of heuristic. We'll have to come up with that. Then it becomes qualified lead.
I mean, I think the difference here is that a lead is a person and a signal is something that a person did.
Mm-hmm.
And so it adds like a lead is typically just based on the fit of the lead. I think the signal is really about the fit of the lead combined with something that they did that indicate that they have a high level of interest and it's the right time to reach out. And so that would be the distinguishing there. But whether you call it a signal or a lead, I think being able to compress that and look at it across every single reason that your sales team reaches out and tracking that in one comprehensive way, no matter how you do it, campaign, member object, custom object, some other custom like homegrown solution, I think that's really the first step that RevOps could take.
So it sounds like lead scoring, so which would combine aspects of both fit and intent, these two together. So just the fact that you have any amount of lead scoring for a lead and then unifying that, that's the low hanging fruit.
Lead scoring or a lead scoring model would be a signal. So you have lead scoring model A, that would be a signal.
Got it.
So I wouldn't consider signals a lead scoring mechanism. I would consider lead scoring one discrete signal, if that makes sense.
Is there such a thing as like a unified score for a lead though?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, like lead scoring is one of the signals, but is there, if we just look at, I guess a lot of the customers, maybe they just want one score. Like, who should we go after? The score of this is 99, so let's just go after that. And then you unpack it with the analytics software that you've built out, which is, here are all the piece, or here are all the signals that went into this score, and you can decide for yourself if you want to reach out. But holistically, like for a RevOps person, it's just one unified score. I'm just wondering if that's what you've seen.
Uh, I haven't thought about this too much, but from like off the cuff, I think it should be binary. We're going to reach out or we're not. not the score is 80. You decide if you want to reach out or not. I think it should be reach out or not. I think that there's a requisite enough data to be able to get there right now.
Got it. Okay, so this you have to hit a threshold. That makes sense. We have one question that came in, and it's how do you tell, even from your own experience, like how do you tell if a website visit is stronger than a lead form, or like basically, yeah, is a website visit stronger than a lead form? What are some of the signals that you've seen be the most powerful in terms of indicating high intent?
The conversion from signal to closed won is the number one way to figure that out. And you could also like apply common sense, where someone that fills out your form and says, "I want to talk to your sales team," is going to be more like a more ready to buy than someone that just came to your website and didn't take that action. But looking at the combination of just how like the signal, this person submitted a demo request, or we had 100 people submit a demo request. How many of those people became a closed won customer? Maybe that's 3. So 100 demo requests, 3 closed won customers. And then you take 100 website visits and you look at how, if we reached out from sales on those 100 website visits to accounts or people, how many people became closed won? Likely 1 or 0. And then that would be able to determine which are better signals overall. And I use small numbers there, but companies that are at scale will have thousands, tens of thousands, up to millions of data points that they can have, where the trends become very, very clear.
That makes sense. Yes, and this is how you would tier signals between tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about tiering signals, but that could be an interesting thing to consider.
Next question is, given all these advancements in signal-based go-to-market, how should small teams rethink the way they traditionally build their sales teams when transferring out of founder-led sales?
I don't think this has that much to do with signals, to be honest, but this is more of a financial planning and business strategy exercise, where back in the day, companies would decide how many sales reps that they need based on what their average quota attainment is. Every single individual rep will close $1 million in business. And therefore, if we want to get $10 million in new business this year, we're going to need 10 reps. And it was just a reverse sales headcount model of how much revenue do we need? How much is each salesperson going to close? Okay, this is how many salespeople we need. And that model just doesn't work anymore based on the way that B2B buyers buy and evolve, which is very different than when those models were built in the 2000s or the 1990s. And so now the way to decide how many salespeople that your business should have is based on how much pipeline you can create consistently. A combination between the investments that you have in marketing, in founder brand, if that's available to you, and in sales development. This is how much qualified pipeline we create consistently. This is the win rate against that. Okay, this is how many reps that we need to be able to take care of and close that level of qualified pipeline, which would have, if companies built the model that way, they would have somewhere between 2 and 3 times less sales reps than they do today, which is just the reverse of 35 to 45% sales quota attainment right now. When you have 30 or 40% of your sales reps hitting quota, 1, it's a planning issue, and 2, you don't have enough pipeline for all the sales reps to be successful. And 3, it's not a sales capability problem at that point. It's a pipeline problem. And so I think just the way that companies plan sales headcount needs to be fundamentally rethought, based on the way that buyers buy today, which is far more independent buying and far less control of that sales has in the process.
Is there this issue of when you're a founder coming into sales, you want to bring on another person to help drive more pipeline? So it's also a question of, do you hire the salesperson first as a founder? Do you hire the marketing, demand gen, category creator? Like, how do you think about that, especially in this day and age?
You figure out how to do marketing yourself as the founder.
And what will be
So
some
door
of the
number
things
3.
that, yes, door number 3. And what will be some of the things that work today? Because we know that, most sales and marketing strategies don't necessarily have an infinite shelf life. So today, what's been effective for founders?
Host a weekly live event and crush organic LinkedIn content.
That has definitely worked for many companies that I know of. And how about if their audience isn't on LinkedIn? And then I guess you have to find the right channel that they're in.
Maybe you're selling to construction workers that use Facebook more. Maybe I don't know, like I don't know very many B2B companies that sell to people that are less than 25, but if you did, then maybe TikTok is the place. But generally, B2B companies that sell to an executive level buyer that makes buying decisions, your audience will use LinkedIn. And you can run a very simple test for like $500. You can target the people that you want at the accounts that you want using ads. You can run those ads for 2 days. You can see how much reach and how many impressions happen on those ads. And then you can know for sure whether or not the people that matter to you or use the platform or not.
Got it. That's really good. And so once you've figured out the founder marketing, what does that take you to? Does it take you to 100K in ARR typically, or does it take you to a million? And then that's when you have to think about how to scale this?
I mean, most companies that raise money and get to a million ARR get to a million through investor introductions and founder sales and things like that. So, this is not a path that most companies take, just to be clear. But the benefit of the founder brand strategy is that you do the same amount of work and you get exponential or incremental more results over time. Where I continue to do 3 podcasts every single week. I post 3 podcasts. I post on LinkedIn the same amount of time that I did since 2019, but my reach is significantly higher. The pipeline that I create is significantly higher. The amount of people talking about me, inviting me to speak on events, all those things continue to increase. And so it's kind of like how people thought about SEO in 2007, right? Like the results that you got on SEO in the first year were good, but then in year 2, they got better. In year 3, they got better. In year 4, they continued to get better. And so you have to think about this as a compounding strategy that goes with you, not let's figure out how to do founder marketing to a million ARR and then stop doing that and do something else. You have to think about it as a long-term business growth strategy. With the recognition that the number one way to grow your business today is to be the best in your competitive set at organic social media content. That's it.
And why is that?
Because that's the number one way that people can consume and become aware of net new information, and then take that information and share it with the other stakeholders in their business and use content as the way to educate the rest of the buying group around why they should make a decision or do something differently in their business. That starts with someone being aware of it in social media platforms that have reach. And that reach then moves into dark social type of sharing inside of Slack channels or direct messages or text messages or things like that. And that content finds its way to all the people in your target customer that need to see it, and allow your customer to independently educate themselves and buy a solution rather than having to go and ask your sales rep 20 questions in a meeting.
Okay, so this is an education game. And then how would you go about doing this? It can be pretty generalized. Like, do you create content? This is how you do the thing that you're trying to do that our tool is supposed to just do for you. But if you were to hack it on your own, this is how you do it. Like, what's the methodology to reach this audience and make sure that they talk about you on organic social platforms?
Host a weekly live event that you do where you provide free consulting to your target customer. Invite your customers, invite your prospective customers, have someone that's hosting the event that is credible, that those people can learn from, and then record that content and then use that content in your social media organic posts. And then the organic posts that do well, take that and then boost it using thought leadership ads to your target set of accounts.
Love that. Our next question, it kind of switches us back to the signal-based analytics process. But so everything is starting from sales outreach. How do we get the sales team to record the data in? We all know sales teams never add all the touch points. This is an issue that we've come across a lot.
You have 2 options: build the automation to look back in the data and never require your sales reps to do manual work, which I would never ask our sales representatives to put in a bunch of manual effort. So this is a RevOps project to collect the data and then create the automation to look back. Or change the paradigm completely, where when sales does prospecting, it is triggered by a signal rather than the other way around. Those are the two options that you have.
How should a sales rep think about spending their days? Should they be actively looking for the signals that have been working? Like, maybe all the data is in the CRM, but I feel like the question that has been largely left unanswered is, what do I do right now at this moment? Because the world is so dynamic, it's changing so quickly. Like, the right signal, it changes by the second. like in a moment's notice, someone could be on the website and then you could be talking to them and they're a high intent prospect, but the next second they're gone and the signal changes. So how do you think a sales rep should be spending their time?
I mean, like, okay, I'll come at this at a couple different angles, but I think it's really important to note that your control as an individual sales rep around your own success and the success of the company is just way different than it was 10 years ago. Um, in the fact that the way that pipeline is created is very different than it was 10 years ago when it comes to a sales rep self-generating pipeline and how much was going to come from quote unquote marketing or first party assets and other places like that. And the way that customers buy, the process that they use and the amount of research they do before they want to engage with a sales rep is entirely different, where a buyer is going to complete 80 to 90% of their buying process before they even try to engage with a seller. And so I think that's a recognition that we need to have as a seller when we think about what company do we want to sell for, what brand and what product do we want to sell for. And choosing that right is probably the number one decision we need to make as a sales rep today. Now, when we get into the micro, almost none of your individual companies are going to be tracking all of these signals and feeding them to you. So it's going to be your responsibility to go out and figure out how to do that. I would be looking for specific, maybe they give you Sales Navigator, maybe they give you User Gems, maybe you have Zoom Info, whatever tool you have available. And if they're not going to track the data for you, then you could take the concept and idea of I'm going to track the data myself. I'm going to do my own experiments around this where I'm going to do 200 reach outs a day based on 200 of these signals. I'm going to track each of those different things. I'm going to see which ones I'm getting responses for, which ones the meetings are being held, how those meetings are going, and then I'm going to be able to isolate and understand these are the signals that actually matter. And so I thinking about it as like your own type of experiment, which a lot of people might do anecdotally, might not collect the data, but I think that is potentially your best bet today. Is it perfect? No, but given the constraints in the way that you have to operate today, that would be my primary recommendation.
If you were a sales rep, and I know you're doing many other things, but what tools would you advocate for? You mentioned a couple like User Gems, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Are there ones who are like, we need this tool, I need this to succeed?
I mean, here the key insight as a seller to know is that the number one thing that impacts the success of your outbound prospecting is your name. When I send an email and they see an email from Chris Walker, it doesn't matter what the subject line is. It doesn't matter what's in the email. It doesn't matter what time I sent it. It doesn't matter why I sent it. The likelihood of someone opening that email and consuming it is very different than blah, blah, blah sales rep that you've never heard of. And so that's an insight that I think everybody needs to know, because I think people really undervalue that part of it, that the sender is the number one most important thing. Because like, even if I just reach out cold to people and I send those emails, I'll get 9 out of 10 meetings. Most people will get 0 out of 10. They might not even get opens from that. And so thinking about how you can be more known inside of your target customer set through engaging in their content, maybe producing content, maybe going to events, maybe producing in a community, only if you plan on being in that industry for a long time. If you're a sales rep that's going to jump from one company and then 18 months later go to another company and then 18 months later go to another company and play the jump around game, it makes no sense to invest your time to do those, because you're going to be starting from scratch every 18 months. So, but if you are committed to a space or an industry, that building the credibility and the awareness around your name will have long-standing impacts in your career long term. And then when it comes to the actual like signals, what I use today are who are the people and accounts that visited my website that didn't fill out a form, who are the people that have a new chief revenue officer, what companies within this set of demographics and size have a new chief revenue officer is a great reason for me to reach out. And then we get enough pipeline through our website and inbound DMs because of my content. So those are the available things that we use, which we feel are for me doing founder-led sales. I'm not going to do things that fail 99 times out of 100. It's a waste of my time. And so what we try to isolate are the things where we have a really high probability to get a meeting, and then even after that meeting, have a high probability to close.
Amazing. I think there are many important key insights there. One of them is you should be building your brand. As an individual SDR, you can be posting on LinkedIn, you can be posting video content, and we've seen it for ourselves too. That the more well aware people know who you are, the more likely they are to open your emails and maybe take a meeting with you. Chris, I know you got to leave in just about 5 minutes, so I want to have the audience, any last questions that people want to ask, please post them into the chats so we can ask them. I'll start with my last question, and then if there are any more, we can feed them through. But just curious, LinkedIn has been a big channel for a lot of folks in the go-to-market space. Are there other channels that we should be considering? Because once you've, to the extent that you can tap out of LinkedIn, what do you do next?
Outside of LinkedIn, I think the following tier down and no level of prioritization would be podcast. Following that would be a weekly live event that you do through Zoom or something like that, and following that would be a strategy around YouTube Shorts. And I guess you could put email in there somewhere as well. I think email could be a good medium, but you don't get the reach like you do in social networks. So I think those are the next available places that you would go from there.
And for these social platforms, it's pretty difficult to go viral, especially if your audience is fairly niche. Like, for instance, go-to-market's a big world out there, but even then, you wouldn't expect a short to go viral if it's talking about really like things that we're talking about right now. Typically, it's maybe a small subset of people. So how do you think about that?
That the volume of engagement is typically like inversely correlated with the results of the business results that happen in a B2B company. That let me say that a different way, that typically my worst performing posts from an engagement standpoint are the ones that drive the most inbound DMs and pipeline from them. They're more specific, they're more targeted, they matter more, they're less applicable to people. They're probably things that people aren't talking about as much. And so in this game where people are chasing likes and engagement with the idea of going viral, I've gone viral. I've had TikTok posts go for 500,000 views. I've had LinkedIn posts go for 3 million views. You get no pipeline from them. Because you're not talking about things that actually matter to your target audience. You're not talking about things that challenge the way people think. And so there's a big difference between pandering to the algorithm for likes and engagement versus creating a message that really resonates with your audience and motivates them to try to make a change or be interested to reach out to you. And I think we need to be able to balance that, especially in B2B, where we sell to a defined set of accounts and people inside of those accounts. It's different, and this is why I think that people do not take enough. A lot of B2B marketers take so much context and advice that comes from B2C or from people that sell newsletter subscriptions or some other type of media company, and then they try to bring that into a B2B company. And a lot of the advice that comes from those types of businesses are not applicable to B2B companies. Sure, if you sell gym shorts to men of all ages, it would make sense that you want to get 10 million views on your video. If we sell to CIOs at companies that are between 200 and 1,000 employees, there's only 1,000 people that matter in the whole world for us. And so who cares whether we get 10 million views on a video? There's only 1,000 people that matter to us. So there's a very big difference, especially in B2B, in terms of reach and engagement and how that matters to business results.
I love it. Focus on the quality of the content. Don't worry about the vanity metrics. Just make sure you're reaching your target audience with the message you want. Chris, it was wonderful to have you on today. I learned a lot. I hope the audience learned a lot. And if there's any remaining questions, we can follow up later. But thank you so much again for your time.
Appreciate you all having me here. Hope it was valuable. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.